Welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. We are live and we're talking about Pesach. What's up with the matzah on Pesach? Can anybody tell me why we eat matzah on Pesach? No. You do know. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? Guys, come on, let's go back to basics.
The Torah says you will.
Why does the Torah say so? Let's get back to that down to basic.
We were in a rush, we were in a hurry.
It's what? What was that?
This is an honest class.
Wait till you see. Just wait till you see where we're going. I want to tell you something, Rob. It's when you ask yourself, we call it a klotz kasha. A klotz kasha is it? You know what a klotz is?
I know what
A klotz is like a shmendrik shlemazel. You know, a klotz is like a fool, right? A klotz kasha is a question that only a fool would ask. But when you ask it and you ponder, you're like, yeah, what really is the reason? You'll discover some depth that you never even realized, you never imagined was there. So what then, friends, is the reason why we eat the matzah? Can anybody tell me? Guys, let's keep it simple. What's the reason we eat the matzah?
Remind us the hardship that we went through.
Not just the hardship. It reminds us that the Jews left Egypt in a rush. That's the reason. Because the bread did not have time to rise on their backs as they were escaping from Egypt. That's the reason, folks. Now, I want to ask you a question.
No.
Oh, did they have the night before?
Yes.
What, did they eat it with the Paschal? Okay, fine. Very good. Very good question. Oh, you see, he's getting somewhere. So did they not have it when they ate it together with the Paschal lamb the night before? They didn't even leave Egypt yet. They were still in Egypt. They weren't going anywhere yet. They were locked in their homes on the night of Passover. What's up with the matzah? That's a good question. So if they were already eating matzah before they left Egypt, then why do we eat matzah? Because they were in a rush. And besides, they weren't even in a rush.
The internet's not working so well.
So what then, my friends? What then is the reason that we eat the matzah? The Torah tells us the reason is because they were in a rush. But what's a rush got to do with it? Okay, let's talk about the rush. Let's forget Marty's question.
Of course.
which is a very valid question. The fact that the night before they were already eating the matzah, right? The fact that the night before they were already eating the matzah and they weren't even on the way out. Let's just assume that they were eating it on the way out of Egypt. What were they worried about exactly? Okay, what exactly were they worried about? That they were in a rush because of what reason? They had a plane to catch. Why were they in a rush?
Because they are taking all the Egyptian stuff.
And what were they worried about when they took the Egyptian stuff?
They would come back after that.
They were worried that the Egyptians would change their mind. Now, is that a fact, sir? Think about that. Think about that. No, it's a very logical point you're saying. But is that really the reason? Think about this because the Egyptians had just experienced 10 crushing plagues. The pinnacle of which, the straw that broke the camel's back, was the plague of the firstborn the night before. The Egyptians were practically begging them to leave. It was clearly not that they were worried that the Egyptians were going to change their mind. It could not have been the reason.
Well,
They were in a rush to get to God.
No, they didn't know about it.
It was the time they had to leave.
No, hang on. They did know about the Torah. You have to say they did know about the Torah. Moses' call from the very first time Moses had his first job interview at the burning bush. He was told to tell Pharaoh, let my people go so that they may serve me on this mountain. So they knew that they were heading to a mountain somewhere to serve God.
Well, they didn't know they get it.
Okay, but they knew they were serving God. So that's valid.
You could take the Jews out of Egypt. But you take the
Oh, Tazoy. Oh, da is the Hund begruben. Here is the dog buried. Okay? Okay, so this is good. This is very, very important. It's very, very important. So what Rob is saying is that actually the rush, which every preschool, Jewish kindergarten kid knows about the rush, is not actually because of the Egyptians that we were worried about. It's not that we were worried about getting the Jews out of Egypt. It's that we were worried about getting Egypt out of the Jews, which means, in other words, that we weren't worried about the Egyptians changing their minds. They couldn't wait for the Jews to get out of Egypt so that they would be able to be free from the calamities that had recently befallen them. It wasn't that they were worried about the Egyptians changing their minds. They were worried about somebody else changing their minds. And who was that?
Jews.
The Jews. They were worried about the Jews changing their minds, being afraid of freedom. Wow. Now, wow to that concept. Let's process this, okay? Why would anybody be afraid of freedom? Do you know anybody that's afraid of freedom?
80% that stayed behind.
80% of the Jewish people in Egypt did not make it out of Egypt because they did not believe or did not want the redemption. So right there, we talk about, I'm going to double down on that and say, why were the 80% afraid of freedom?
You don't trade the devil you know for the devil you don't.
Because you don't trade the devil you know for the devil that you don't know. Now, this is a lot to process, guys. This is a big deal because what we're accessing here is really the essence of the Passover Seder experience. This is what and guys, I want to encourage you to talk to your family about this at your Seders, folks. I want to encourage you to bring this question up at the Seder. Bring this question up at the Seder, where you ask your every kindergarten, every Jewish kid that goes to preschool, Jewish preschool knows the story. Yeah, because they're in a rush. Who went, and then ask the parents. Yeah, they were in a rush, and the parents, they're wandering off, checking their cell phones already, right? And you're like, what's it? Come back here a second. What exactly were they running away from? And now this is going to become a fascinating conversation, where you say that you're not willing to trade the devil that you know for the devil that you don't know, right? Let's just talk about American history for a second. Give me a group of people that is afraid of freedom in America today. Is there a group of people that is afraid of independence, of being self-sufficient? Who would that be?
I'm not going to say.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fine. You know what? Good answer. Good answer. He doesn't want to get political. Very good. No, good answer. I like that. Don't get political, but I want you to draw your own conclusion. And I want you to start thinking about what you can do at your own Seder with this information. Because depending on who's sitting around your Seder table, this could become a very interesting conversation about a group of people today that are enslaved by perhaps entitlements, that are enslaved by benefits, and when offered freedoms, they say, no, thank you. On a more extreme level, this could be viewed as Stockholm Syndrome, where a person is protecting their abusers, right? Where someone who's actually, think about, let's go into an abusive marriage for a second. Get into abusive marriage for a second, right? Or an abusive parenting. How often does it happen that a child or abused child or abused spouse, how often does it happen? I'm sorry, I'm just very sensitive to talk in around the room when I'm talking. I have a very hard time with that. I apologize if I'm a little overly sensory. But anyways, how often does it happen that an abused child or abused spouse or abused employee will actually tolerate the abuse because of the exact reason you just said, Rob? Because I wouldn't trade the devil that I don't know for the one that I do. And this is the one I'm comfortable with, right?
It's very often.
It's very often.
Quite often.
And it's astounding. It's mind-blowing when you look at it.
Exactly, you brought up, the independence of the United States, the Revolutionary War. Lots of people in the United States preferred to stay with the crown rather than.
Very interesting. So Marsha from where are you from, Marsha? From Sydney, Australia? Oh, cool. Yeah, Marsha from Sydney, Australia. She agrees with me. Good. Yeah.
You had the same people sitting protesting, wearing yarmulkes and chaining themselves to fences at Columbia University also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with a yarmulke.
Okay, so let's talk about college campus protests, where you have Jews for Palestine, right? Jews for Hamas, and you're like, what? What? It's like chickens for KFC, to quote, Bibi Netanyahu. Yeah, queers for Palestine, same thing, right? It's the same thing. So you're like, one second, we're just processing this a second, right? So why would Jews protest against Israel? Because they feel that there's anti-Semitism, okay? But I can tolerate the anti-Semitism. I can tolerate it. And I'd rather, at least support the anti-Semitism that I have right now and show them that I'm not afraid of them and that I'm a part of them, right? Because they don't want to trade the devil that they know to the devil that they don't know. Now, more than anything, this is the theme of Passover, friends, about people that are afraid of freedom. Because again, it's not the oppressor that's the problem. It's the oppressed that's become the problem. right? More than anything, it's ourselves and our internal oppressors that we need to be afraid of. Because if you look at the structure, of a human psyche, we actually have an abuser and an abusee inside of ourselves. And that's how God created us. Very, very interesting. We were created in a way where we have two of us. We have a godly soul, which is pure, authentic. And then we have an animal soul, which is a wilde chaya. It's like a bull in a china shop, right? And now the godly soul is actually subjugated to it's what's the word? It's recessive to the dominant animal soul. Why? I mean, think about it. When you're born, you have an animal soul. Your godly soul only starts entering for a boy at his bris 8 days later, and for a girl at the baby naming when she's named over the Torah, right? That's when it starts entering. The godly soul finishes entering at the bar or bas mitzvah. So it's got a 14-year head start. The animal soul started already at conception, right? It's 14 years later that the godly soul enters. And what about a convert? Convert will be 40, 50, 60, 70 years later that the godly soul enters. That's not even fair. What's supposed to happen now, right? It's like you're late to the party. The godly soul comes up and says, let's do the right thing. And the animal soul's like, excuse me, that's not how we do things around here. It's not the traditional way in this house, how we operate. This house is a house of narcissism, of self-centeredness, of indulging in personal pleasures. And if you want to start davening now, or laying tefillin, or doing mitzvahs, or lighting Shabbos candles, hello, find yourself another house. This is not how we do things. And the godly soul is now abused by the animal soul. The question is, how are you going to deal with that? The story of the Exodus from Egypt is not just a story of the Jewish people escaping from the Egyptians. It's a story of ourselves having the courage to overcome our own abusers from within. And if you look at yourself, if you do a cost benefit analysis, or P&L, imagine you had to do a P&L sheet on yourself. Profit and loss statement on yourself. Think about it. You can do a profit and loss statement on your business. That's kind of easy. Speak to your accountant. But imagine you did a P&L on yourself. Would it look like the stock market? Like, right? Right? How would it look? Right? Think about that. So if you did a P&L, where were you standing a year ago, 1 year ago, and where are you standing right now? So last year, how strong, if you had to give a score, if you had to give a score to your godly soul and a score to your animal soul, right? Maybe a year ago, your godly soul was at 40% and your animal soul was at 95%, right? Or how about you say 70-30 or 80-20, right? 80-20. But now this year it might be 60-40 or 50-50 or maybe 40-60, right? And this is the escape from Egypt, right? This is your analysis of understanding of how you were supposed to escape from Egypt. The fact of the matter is, the reason why they needed to run out of Egypt, the Rebbe explains, the reason for the haste is because the Jews might change their minds due to Stockholm Syndrome being a real thing. That at any moment, the Jew might have said, like Toby pointed out, the 80% of Jews that stayed in Egypt, they just said, I'm comfortable with the devil that I know. And therefore, I don't want to escape. I don't want freedom, right? I mean, think about it for a second. When you talk to your kids at the Seder, right? You know those kids that are still on your dole, on your credit card? You're still paying their cell phone bills at 47 years old, right? You know those ones? You're still paying their car insurance. You're still paying their stipends. Think about this for a second. Imagine you said to your kid, imagine you said to your 20-year-old or 30-year-old or 40-year-old kid or 60-year-old kid, imagine you said to them, okay, I'm joyously announcing to you that Mom and I have decided to bestow freedom upon you. And from now on, you are welcome to pay all of your own bills. Freedom! Let freedom reign, right? What would happen? How would they react? That's right. And now we're beginning to understand the problem. Why they needed to leave Egypt in a rush. Because the moment you get inspired, chaparain. The moment that you get inspired, get on that train and get the you-know-what out of here. Because if you don't jump on the train right now, there's no telling what's going to be in 5 minutes or 5 hours. If you were inspired at any moment, you're going to have to take. Ooh, I think I banned the wrong person. I literally banned. How do you unban someone? I'm so sorry. I just banned someone by mistake.
Berger, I think he banned you.
No, really, I really banned this lady from Sydney, Australia by mistake. I thought she was telling me.
Is there a way you can go to ban people?
I don't know.
There is a way.
I don't know. I'm so sorry, Marsha.
You can block him.
If anybody knows Marsha from Sydney, Australia, please tell her that I'm very sorry for banning her from Worldwide Wisdom. I don't even know if it's on YouTube or what, where she's on. She was on YouTube. Yeah, she was on YouTube. Sorry. Yeah, if you can get onto YouTube somehow, I don't know. Okay, apologize. Sorry, Manchester, UK, Shimon. Nice to see you. Okay, so good. So back to business over here, guys. Let's talk about this, right? So we are slaves to our animal soul. Our animal soul is the default setting inside of us. Doing the right thing is a novelty. It's out of the ordinary. It has to beat the new path, right? Blaze a new trail, which we're not necessarily comfortable with. So how do we do this? To do this, we need to have the courage to break free of our pre-existing convictions. To do that, we've got to have the courage to be a maverick. And that's not something which comes naturally to us. What would it take for a college-age kid to say to mom and dad, I really want to get off your payroll? Like, what would it take? Like, really, like, seriously. Isn't this an interesting discussion to have with your Seder? Like, what would it take for a kid to actually say, Mom and Dad, please, can you stop it already? You're enslaving me. I want to be independent. Can you stop paying my bills effective immediately so that I will have no choice but to go out and actually shake a leg, shake some trees, make some money, become independent, and live a responsible life, or stop it already. All right? What a Seder would it be? Right?
It would take a very long time, what you did for the Jews. How often, after they left Egypt, did they say to Moses, is this why you brought us here to die here? We'd rather go back.
During the 40 years in the desert, they didn't stop kvetching.
The whole time.
Then we remember the cucumbers, we remember the watermelons, like Egypt was just the Ritz-Carlton, right? They
got to the Red Sea.
Yeah, the Slav. They were so missing the enslavement in Egypt. And now you can understand that when you say, when a kid goes independent and they don't have money for dinner or for their, for the car insurance. And they're like, look, I remember the good old days when mom and dad paid my bills and I could just, had a magic credit card and I could just go out and do what I wanted. You can understand what they were thinking. We didn't have any anxieties. Think about this like this. So what's the difference between being a boss and an employee? So the employee gives up his freedoms for security, and the boss gives up his security for his freedoms. Think about that, right? Agreed? You have a lot of employees, right? So which one is better? I think there's a lot to be said about the employee giving up his freedoms for his security, because he has a security. It's a very nice place to be. I'm very comfortable. But that's a form of enslavement where you want to be able to be free, even though it's going to cost you your security. And that's not something which many people are comfortable with. I think it was Stacy who said most people would trade freedom for security. Well said. And Marsha, who I kicked off here by mistake, I'm sorry. She said before, she's probably not going to hear me now. She said lots of people are afraid of leaving the place of limitation. Right?
There's another way of thinking.
Yeah.
Here's the Jews who were slaves. They have no money. All of a sudden, they're loaded. They're very wealthy. And they say, I'm going to the desert, but I can't spend the money because there's nothing to buy. In Egypt, I can buy things. That could be a reason why Moses wanted to get them out of Egypt as fast as possible.
Are you talking about tariffs and trade wars? Or
They got all of Egypt's money. Now they have all this money, but they know if they go in the desert, they can't buy anything. So it's the use of going to the desert. I'd rather stay in Egypt.
So you're saying they were entrepreneurial and they wanted to do commerce.
They were going right into
The promised land.
Hello, they were going to the promised land. Good morning, Chuck. They were going to the promised land.
They screwed up so it was longer, but they thought they were going.
Guys, I want to take it back. I want to keep us focused, right? So basically, what I'm trying to say is this is the reason for the rush. This is the reason for the rush of the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, and the reason why we make such a big deal out of the matzah is because in order for you and I to experience freedom in this Pesach, Not just for them. We're not even talking about them. Who cares about the Jews that came out of Egypt 3,250 years ago? It's me and you that we're worried about. The people around the Seder table.
Every day.
Do you have the courage to break out of Egypt every generation and every single day, like the Mishnah says? That's the big question. What's it going to take to break free? What's it going to take to break free is it requires haste. Because you can easily doubt yourself. You can gaslight yourself and say, this is a crazy idea. And actually, I'm not going to do it. You can be like the turtle who's emerging and he runs back into his shell. It's like, I'd rather have the safety of my little shell, even though it's dark in here. It doesn't matter, but at least I feel safe, right? So that's the reason why we make such a big deal out of the haste. And from here we learn an eternal message that every single Jew is commanded by biblical command to break out of Egypt. You have to break free from your Egypt. Remember, Egypt means limitations, boundaries, constraints, narrow-mindedness. You've got to break free from your small-mindedness, and you've got to be able to rise to maturity, to broad-mindedness, right? To break free from the enslavement of your body. What is your body? Your body wants to physically indulge. To break free from your natural tendencies and your selfish habits. In order to embrace your true identity, your spiritual existence, your godly essence. And that happens when you break free in haste. Now you'll notice that there's an interesting word when it says the 4 cups of wine we drink, corresponding to the 4 expressions of freedom. I will take them out, and I'll redeem them, and I'll save them, and I'll take them. 4 expressions of redemption, 4 cups of wine. When it says and I will take them out of Egypt, it says and I will take you out of the patience of Egypt. The word can be translated as, and I'll take you out of the suffering of Egypt, but the real word sivlois actually means, and I'll take you out of the patience. Like savlanut means patience in Hebrew, right? Tolerance. I'll take you out of the tolerance of Egypt. Why? Because our tolerance threshold is accustomed to the enslavement that we're in. And God is trying to free us from our status quo. He's trying to free us from our current comfort levels. Because to be a Jew is to have the courage to constantly reinvent yourself. It's so deep, it's so personal, it's so mature, it's so profound. And I wanted to draw your attention to something that the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya at the end of chapter 31. At the end of chapter 31, the Alter Rebbe he asks a question about why it was that Moses needed to deceive Pharaoh. What did Moses ask Pharaoh to do when they were on the way out of Egypt? He asked them to allow them 3 days to go and worship God on the mountain that he has chosen, and then they'll come back. So Moses was effectively lying to Pharaoh. He asked for 3 days. And what did he get? Forever. We were leaving forever. So the Alter Rebbe was asking a question. Why was it that Moses needs to deceive Pharaoh? I mean, think about the bargaining leverage that he had. Just think about it for a second. Last night, we had Pharaoh running in his pajamas, looking for Moses, begging him to leave Egypt, because Pharaoh himself was the firstborn. And Moses says, okay, we'll leave, but we're not going to do it in the middle of the night like fugitives. We're going to leave in the middle of the day, right? And what is he asking for? He says, but all we're asking for is for 3 days. With that kind of bargaining leverage, where Pharaoh himself is afraid of his own life, and he is in the middle of the night personally coming looking for Moses, after he swore that Moses was never going to see his face ever again. Remember, that happened two plagues earlier. So now he himself comes, violates his own vow, and he says, Moses, I need you guys to get the heck out of here. So Moses, only 3 days. Why would he only ask for 3 days? He could have asked for permanent freedom for the same exact price. So the Alter Rebbe explains that our escape from Egypt mirrors exactly our godly soul's escape from our animal soul. In the Beinoni, which is the struggling Jew, the godly soul is imprisoned in the animal soul. And when it has a chance to break free, it's got to do so as fast as possible, because it's likely to be recaptured at any moment. How does the godly soul maintain its freedom? By fueling its freedom through Torah study and acts of mitzvahs. But at any moment, it's able to fall back onto old paradigms. At any moment, the animal soul is able to, just get old practices and protocols back into place, right? And that's why that's why we need to deceive our animal soul. Because if you're going to ask your animal soul for complete freedom, for an amputation, for a complete divorce, he's unlikely going to agree. You're going to have to do it through acts of deception, through haste, because there's no other way to break free. Think of a person who's been in prison. You hear these stories. There's a story the other day of a guy who's like 33 years old, enslaved by I think it was his stepmother. He's living for 20 years, since 11 years old. You heard about the story? Like 11 years old, his stepmother pulled him out of school and put him in the house, in I think Cleveland maybe, and locked him in the house. So 20 years. At 33 years old, this emaciated guy then wasn't getting much food over the years, and clearly had no idea about maturity or how to live a normal life. He set the house on fire because that was his way of escaping, because he was unable to break free. This 33-year-old, his stepmother was probably more than double his age. He was unable to break free. And it's amazing that he had the courage to set the house on fire. You hear these stories every once in a while. You have these kids that are trapped by their father, wicked father, or crazy stories, these dungeons. Crazy stories. And how do they break free? They don't just say, I'm done with you. I deserve better than this. I'm out of here. They don't do that. You never hear that story. They're always like running in the middle of the night, and they do all sorts of crazy deceptions, because that's what happens when you feel enslaved. Because such is the nature of human beings. And Pesach is the time when we sit around the table and we have to ask ourselves a tough question. What is it that we are enslaved to? It's not very difficult to find that answer. The answer is you're enslaved to yourself. We're not afraid of the Egyptians changing their minds. We're afraid of us changing our own minds. We are afraid that we ourselves will not be willing to allow ourselves to be free, because we prefer to stay on the dole. We want to stay on mommy and daddy's payroll. We want to be on the government's payroll. We want to be free benefits. We don't want to be having independence, because we're much happier this way, right? And if I don't have to work, then why should I work? If I could just get unemployment, free benefits, then why should I work, right? And obviously you can interpret this however you wish. It makes for a great Seder conversation. It makes for a great Seder conversation, folks. And I think that we're onto something on a very spiritual and very personal level. Remember the haste. Focus on the haste. Fabrang about the haste at your Seder Pesach. Talk about it. Discuss it with your family. It's a great question to ask and a beautiful discussion to have about why it's so necessary to have the haste, because the Torah validates and it says it's not easy to break free. Freedom isn't free.
Sure.
To build a new habit, you got to take action.